Hi, I'm Emma, and I'm currently in a reading slump. To get myself out of this reading slump, I thought I would enlist my boyfriend.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm Emma's boyfriend.
He's not in the room with me right now. Just because he's not in the room with me right now doesn't mean he's not in the room with me right now. Anyway, I love to read romance, and he doesn't know a ton about romance, so I thought it would be really fun to give him a few prompts, basically an either or, with a variety of different questions, have him choose one of them that either connects directly to a book or leads me to a book, and then I will read that book. So, I will take you on this journey with me as my boyfriend sort of kind of chooses my TBR in the sense that I give him prompts and it's sort of like a choose your own adventure, except for he's choosing my adventures, but they're kind of manufactured in a way so that I get to have a good time. Fixed, if you will. Let's get started. I will not lie to you. You are propped on a 6-pack of tiny Pepsis, but actually only a 5-pack. I already drank one of them. I should mention that one of the parameters, a pretty important parameter that I gave myself when deciding what these choices were going to be, not necessarily the questions, but the actual book choices, is that I wanted everything, for the most part, to be available at my library. I didn't want to spend any money. I didn't particularly want to use any of my audiobook services. I didn't want to do any of that. So everything was picked up from my library. So that is where all but I think one of the prompts choices came from. Which brings us to the prompt that I sent to my boyfriend this morning, because I started this morning. This is such a weird word, because yes, you can just say it a bunch of times in a row and it can grammatically make sense. I know that there is a name for it, but I wasn't an English major in a grammar sense. I was an English major in a Seasons of Mist and Mellow Fruitlessness. I'm having feelings and making things up. The first question that I asked him that started my day off real right was, from the title alone, which book sounds better? Simmer Down, seen here, or Intercepted, seen here. I had not heard of Simmer Down. I had heard of the author, but not the book. Intercepted, oh, it's such a hard word for me. Intercepted, I had. Intercepted is a book that has been on my TBR for a very long time, and January Lavoie did the audiobook narration, and she is an audiobook narrator that I really like. So anyway, from the title alone, no cover, no description, nothing, which one sounded better? He chose Simmer Down, which kind of makes sense because Simmer Down is a little more fun to say, but for me, Simmer Down and Intercepted are both difficult to say in similar ways, and I cannot describe why. Anyone else despise describing what books are about? I know I do. I hate it. But before I finish this book and tell y'all all of my thoughts about it, I thought I would explain sort of what it's about. Simmer Down is about a young woman whose parents, their dreams are to, when they retire, move to Hawaii and open up a food truck. Unfortunately, the father passes away, so our main character, their daughter, takes up his dreams with her mother in tow, starting a food truck in his legacy. It's going okay until one day a hot British man and his brother show up and take over their spot, starting a feud between them, an enemies situation, until they realize that actually they had the hots for each other fairly quickly and communicate well, that it had all been a miscommunication, and then they decide to start hooking up, but also keep sort of feuding because it's good for business, especially online. People enjoy the feud, they enjoyed the drama, and also they keep feuding because they don't want to be seen fraternizing in order to not ruin their chances at a competition happening later in the year. That is basically the plot of this book. This is my 7th maybe time doing this review for Simmer Down. Okay, let's talk about Simmer Down, hopefully for the last time. Simmer Down. What did I like about it? Well, I liked the audiobook narrator. I thought the audiobook narrator really elevated this story. I don't think I would have liked this book as much if I had read it physically or via ebook. She did a really good job. It was fiery and fresh and funny and smart and energetic, and that is what you want with an audiobook narrator, to elevate an okay story to something even better. I will say this narrator ran into what I'm calling the Jace from the Mortal Instruments audiobook effect, which is that our main male lead was a hot British guy, and the narrator, doing her best, made him sound goofy, which I enjoyed, but it definitely wasn't the intended purpose or effect. I also like the way food was talked about in this book. I really enjoyed the interactions between the main girl character and her mother. They're both Filipina, making Filipino food. I really enjoyed that aspect. I also like the time that our two characters spent in London, because I like London. What did I not like about it? Well, for one, the most glaringly obvious problem with this book, or maybe issue people might have with this book, is that this book is definitely romanticizing Hawaii, meaning that every character of note is not a native Hawaiian. They're people who moved to Hawaii to follow their dreams, which is a problem and an issue that has caused problems for many, many years for both Hawaiians and for the land in which they live. So that's something to note there. From a purely, particularly me standpoint, don't really love books where the romance is as fast as this, not necessarily in how fast they move, because it's not necessarily very fast. It's the fact that this isn't slow burn. They get together 25% of the way into the book, which means you have 75% for them to just miscommunicate or not communicate. That's a lot of times to just have that trope happen over and over and over again. And while I think that miscommunication isn't necessarily a trope when it's done right, it's a part of being in a relationship, especially as adults, when you have it happen over and over again, it loses its impact. And that's kind of my issue sometimes that you can run into when you have characters get together so quickly. I also sort of low-key love the fact that our main male character did not really have a personality. He was just sort of a cardboard cutout of a man, which is something that I find really funny and entertaining. I prefer it when we have a male character who's nuanced and interesting and feels fully fleshed out, but that was also kind of fun because our main lady character had so much going on, so it was sort of the funniest dynamic and something that I kind of enjoyed, but definitely also didn't at the same time. It would have been better if he was a real person. Overall, this book was fun. It was entertaining. It was adequate. Would I pick it up if I weren't to pick it up? Would I say that I think my boyfriend did a good job? Yes, and the fact that I enjoyed myself. Do I think I would have intercepted more? Probably, because I like sports romances, but he didn't know that that was a sports romance, so that was the whole point of this prompt. Okay. I just finished watching Bachelor in Paradise, so I'm ready to do another prompt, I think, before I take my bath, and read in my bath. Okay, so this prompt that I sent to my boyfriend hours ago was to pick a trope. I picked really boring ones. So the two tropes and the books that they represented that he didn't know they represented, secrets, were Second Chance Romance, which represented the book The Ex Hex by Erin Sterling, also known as Rachel Hawkins, and Hate to Love, which represented the X Talk by Rachel Solomon, I want to say. These are books that both have X in the title. That's kind of the theme that I had specifically. Anyway, so these are the two books I gave him, and he ended up saying, and I quote, Second Chance Romance, which is great for me, because that's the one I wanted him to pick. The X-Hex comes out in September. I have a NetGalley arc of it. I actually started it earlier this week, and kind of want to finish it. I mean, I was going to finish it regardless, because NetGalley is my teacher, and I am a teacher's pet. But this just gives me a better excuse. Thank you, Colin, for doing what I wanted without me asking you to. You had a 50%. Point being, the X-Hex is a rom-com romance magic story with like a small magic aspect, meaning think about like Melissa Joan Hart's Sabrina the Teenage Witch or the television show Bewitched, that kind of magic world building. And it is a little bit hate to love because it follows two people who had a summer fling when they were young and then 9 years later are sort of thrust together due to circumstances, and they have some ill will. Mostly the lady has some ill will towards the guy. The guy is Welsh and the woman is from America. She's from Georgia, which I really love that combination. And it's giving me so far a lot of like cozy Halloween vibes, which as we all know is my favorite thing in the world. I am going to take a bath and read more and update y'all probably when I'm at 50%. Let's go with that. This video is going so great. I deleted a clip where I did the next prompt that was going to help me decide what audiobook I was going to listen to next, but I deleted that clip. So I will reenact it for you. Okay, all right. Give me 1 second. Oh man, it's the evening time. But before I go to bed, I want to pick another audiobook to listen to for the next couple days. Better ask my boyfriend, because that's the whole point of this video. I gave him 2 book covers and asked him to pick which one I should read, based on the book cover and obviously the title alone. I gave him The Soulmate Equation and The Friend Zone. I picked these covers because I think they're both ugly in similar ways, but also ugly in different ways, which makes them beautiful. He said, and I quote, "My God, both so bad. First one." Which means that I have to listen to The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I was happy about this because it meant that I got to listen to another Patty Murin audiobook. Patty Murin, who played Anna in the original Frozen on Broadway, has become a favorite audiobook narrator of mine, specifically for romance. I've read 2 other books she's narrated, and even though I hated one of those books, I enjoyed her narration. So I'm looking forward to it. So there you go, another book that I shall consume, thanks to my boyfriend. Wasn't that blast from the past just a good time? Anyway, I'm like halfway through The Soulmate Equation now, and I have mixed feelings. First of all, I have a question. What is up with all the books about tech and Silicon Valley and tech startups and things like that? I don't find tech very romantic. Maybe that's just me, but I'm a little over it. Also, so many books about dating apps. Like a lot of books about dating apps or the start of dating apps. Anyway, tech startup dating apps specifically. So as you can tell, this is an interesting one for me. This is about a young woman. She's a single mother. She's just been unlucky in love. And one day she ends up sort of circumstantially having to fake date, my favorite trope, fake date the CEO of a tech startup dating app situation that involves genetics. They bring up the eugenics thing, they call it out from the beginning, but I don't know, it's still kind of weird. Anyway, basically, they hate each other at first, because of course, and then they find out that they have a 98% match genetically. So, due to the fact that this startup's about to go public, they have to fake date, because she also needs the money. But of course, they are wildly attracted to each other, but aren't quite sure if they like each other's personalities, or at least she doesn't like his personality. I don't know, that's where we're at. I have a few questions. We asked the first question about the tech startup thing. My second one is like, not really a question, more of a statement. I don't love romance that doesn't have a dual narration. Like, I really enjoy reading either an omniscient narrator where we're kind of getting the same vibe from everybody, or I like reading like, this is one character, this is the other character. I like seeing that. I think it adds so much tension to a book. and knowing kind of everything and the other characters not knowing can be really fun. I don't really care about the guy. I kind of need to be in his head to care about him or feel like I have a vested interest in him. I need that, and that this is a case where I kind of want that, because I don't mind him, but he's kind of cookie cutter. He's a cardboard cutout. He reminds me a lot of the guy that I just read in the last book, Simmer Down. I just want more. But I am mostly enjoying it. Christina Lauren does a really good job of building out a world, and we're getting that here, so I am enjoying that part of it. So there you go. I finished the Soulmate Equation. And I liked it, I think, overall. I definitely liked it more than Simmer Down. I genuinely enjoyed the last half of the book much more than the first half. But I didn't even mind the first half. I don't know. Let me explain. I talked a little bit about what I didn't really like about it already, and that was sort of true for the rest of the book, because those are kind of my own preconceived issues with certain tropes. I did think the character development with the main guy character got better. I still felt like he was a little too perfect until the very end. I really enjoyed, oh my, I could cry. Especially after reading Simmer Down, I really enjoyed the third act conflict. I thought it was done in a really delicate way, and it wasn't really frustrating, and it felt like two adults who weren't communicating and having trouble, but then communicated themselves through that really well. I will say Christina Lauren books move very, very quickly. I know that I read Nora Roberts, but Nora Roberts, I told you, it's in its own little world where I'm well aware of the problems of the fact that people get fucking engaged after 2 weeks. Here is more like the real world, and they move pretty fast. The books move pretty fast. Like, the couples, you know, they're in it very quickly, which is fine, but that's something to note. I overall did enjoy it. I will say that I just wish epilogues, and this is true of Christina Lauren, this is true of a lot of romance writers, I wish epilogues were not like a year later at like the most. Most of the time, like, the best you're going to get for time allotted is a year. This one was like 2 or 3 months. I wish it was like 5 years in the future. You know, like, I want more time. Anyway, I did finish that. I did overall really enjoy it. I ended up giving it 4 stars because the last part of it really touched me, and I thought it was really sweet, and I loved like the semi-found family aspect of the book and the relationship she had with her daughter. I thought it was sweet. And Patty Murin, great audiobook narrator. Yum. I want one final audiobook for this video to listen to while I'm cleaning, and I realized recently that I haven't read a ton of historical fiction in a long time, specifically historical romance fiction. And I went in my library, I looked around, there were like 4 authors that the library had books from, and so I thought, you know what would be fun? I'll give my boyfriend 2 of those authors and have him just pick an author, and I will then pick a book to read from that author. So I gave him Eloisa James or Sarah MacLean, who are both quite famous romance writers, historical romance writers, and my boyfriend chose Eloisa James. And then I looked at the website, I scoured, I realized all the books at my library that were in audiobook form from Eloisa James were from one series, so obviously I picked the first book in that series, and the book is Wild in Love by Eloisa James. And so I sent the book to my boyfriend, a picture of the book to my boyfriend, and he said, ha 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 ha, his chest looks like vanilla pudding sweating in a bowl at a summer picnic. So, with that being said, time to dive into Wild in Love. Hell yeah. Also note, I'm still reading the X-Hex, but as we all know, I swim through audiobooks and paddle through ebooks and physical books. So that's what we're doing here. Hello. So I am like 50 to 60% of the way into Wild in Love, and I'm actually really enjoying it. I think that I got really used to reading like Julia Quinn historical romance, which I really enjoy, but this feels very different. There's just slight things that are different. Like, for example, the main lady character she has kissed boys before because she's been interested in doing it. So she's not completely inexperienced. I like the fact that she understands innuendo. I like the fact that she is quite desired in society, which weirdly doesn't happen that much. I feel like in Regency era, you get a lot of like wallflowers, which I enjoy that trope, but it's kind of fun to see someone who's really confident in herself. Doesn't have a lot of pressure to get married either because she has money. I don't know. It's just like, feels different. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the vibe. It's really entertaining and fun and fast paced. So that's where we're at with that. The dishwasher's going. Hair, skincare, teeth, pajamas. She's in her nighttime routine. I wanted to do another update because tomorrow I'm actually going to go to my boyfriend's and spend the weekend with him. This is where we're at currently with the reading. I'm like 70% into Wild Like Me or Wild Love. Wild Like Me is a book by Louise Pentland, the YouTuber. Wild Love, which I am enjoying, as I've mentioned. I am like 30% into the X Hex. Unsurprisingly, the physical book is taking me the longest. I am going to head to bed, and then this weekend, maybe you'll see my boyfriend. Maybe he'll make an appearance. That would be exciting, right? I'm at my boyfriend's, and I just saw a bear. And I've had 2 ciders, so equivalent of like half a glass of wine, but somehow a little more potent. I don't know. Point being, I finished Wild in Love, and I gotta say, I really loved it. I was pleasantly surprised. I sort of quickly mentioned what I liked about this book was how the author subverted some sort of tropes that go with historical, romantic, Regency era fiction. Something that I forgot to mention was the fact that a lot of the characters wear wigs to fit into like polite society, which I don't feel like you read a lot about in historical romance fiction because it's not sexy to wear a white powdered wig. There's even one character, he's like the main character's older brother and obviously going to be the protagonist of the second book. He like wears a wig in order to impress his fiance who doesn't really like him, seemingly doesn't like him because he wants to be trendy, which I thought was really interesting, and it's seemingly pretty well researched, although I don't know really anything. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I like the fact that like the hero of the book seemed really like nuanced and thoughtful and centered, and somebody who seemed to think through his actions. I also like the third act. It was really exciting. This book doesn't involve a miscommunication trope. They very slowly, over 2 weeks, but slowly in Regency era, sort of fall in love. Mostly the main lady character is really reluctant to fall in love with the hero because he's famous and has a lot of admirers, and she's uncomfortable with his fame and all the attention it brings, which I thought was really interesting. But the third act involves something that's not miscommunication. It involves like a little bit of a thriller aspect, a little bit of an attempted murder by one of those said admirers, which I really enjoyed. It was really exciting. And the audiobook was pretty good as well. So I've done that. In other news, I am like 45 to 50% of the way into the X Hex by Aaron Sterling, and I'm still absolutely loving it. It's really exciting. There's like a lot of tension between our 2 main characters, but there's also like literal like problems happening, like magical issues that are occurring because of this hex that she put on her ex-boyfriend who's now back in town, that's causing like problems outside of their relationship, which I love. I like that the stakes are a little bit higher. Great time. I'm having a great time. I'm back home in my apartment. I forgot I had put all this Halloween stuff up. I'm so happy. Can't wait to get more. Anyway, back to the business at hand. I finished The Ex Hex by Aaron Sterling. I loved it so much. Rachel Hawkins, aka Aaron Sterling, is one of my favorite YA writers of all time, and I knew that I was going to at least like the writing in this book, but I didn't know how well her books would translate to adult romance. And let me tell you, They do. This book was so sweet. It had a really great cozy atmosphere that I rarely find outside of Nora Roberts books or like really specific Halloween romances like The Cottage on Pumpkin and Vine, or even like middle grade on the other end of the spectrum. It had a great atmosphere, a cozy atmosphere, very Halloweeny. This book is literally set in October in a small town. It had academic vibes because the main character worked at a college that was half a witchy college, half a regular college. The second chance romance of this was really sweet and very tempered and very slow, but also quick because they had known each other before. I really enjoyed their dynamic. I enjoyed how much respect was between the two main characters and how well they played off of each other. I liked the interactions of our main character with her cousin, who's like her best friend, and her aunt, who are her immediate family. I thought that was really sweet. I like seeing our hero sort of develop a better relationship with his brothers. It had everything that I love in a book. Romance, really well-written romance, cozy atmosphere vibes, Halloween, and family situations. I really loved it. Also, sort of a side note, an extra little bonus to this, is it had a really fun plot because they were trying to figure out how to break this curse. That was the part of the book that felt the most Rachel Hawkins, that sort of plot aspect, which was really well done, really entertaining, kept you reading, even outside of the romance. I just loved it. It's probably going to be one of my favorite books of the year. I'm so happy that I read it. Yay. Also, I think this is going to be a series, which makes me so happy. I keep thinking that I should maybe like do my hair and makeup for the end of this video, but we're not going to do that. So I asked my boyfriend what he thought I would think of the books that he sort of chose for me. So let's show those clips. The first book was Simmer Down, and here's what he had to say. Do you think I liked the book Simmer Down that you chose for me? It was the first book.
I think, just judging from the title, it sounds like a story of someone getting back to a better point in life
From Simmer Down?
from where they were.
He was not 100% right about this. I didn't love this book. It was my least favorite thing I read this week. I thought it was fine. I talked about it earlier in this video. Y'all remember that. But, you know, he's sort of right, I think, in some ways. The next book was The Soulmate Equation. Here's his thoughts. Now, you picked this cover out, if you remember. There's two really ugly covers, and you chose The Soulmate.
How sweaty guy?
No. The Soulmate Equation. It looked like this. Do you think that I like?
I believe I chose this one because the other one was so much more heinous. That
Yeah.
I couldn't bring myself to subject you to that. To be honest, it was the lesser of two evils.
Do you think I liked it, though?
Yeah, I mean, like, hearts and science.
Great.
You're a woman of STEM.
I'm a woman of STEM. Despite the cover, I really enjoyed this book for the most part, especially the last part of this book. I will say it's already becoming a little bit forgettable, which is a bummer, but that also feels like a very Christina Lauren thing to happen. Unless I hate a Christina Lauren book, I tend not to remember them really well. And then next, Wild in Love. Here's what he had to say. So you chose these from the authors' names, but you chose Eloisa James, and this was the book cover that I went with. Do you think I liked Hot Sweaty
That's Hot
Guy?
Sweaty Guy.
Hot Sweaty Guy. Wild in Love. Do you think I liked Wild in Love?
Yeah, I think you did.
Why?
Hot Sweaty Guy. I mean, I think there's a nod to Oscar Wilde, which I have no real idea or frame of reference for Oscar Wilde's work besides the importance of being earnest, which I'm not even sure is by him.
It is. It is by him.
Well, in that case, that means nothing. So I really chose it because I thought you would get a kick out of reading a book with a hot sweaty guy on it.
Hot sweaty guy.
Also, probably to think that a man is sweating profusely that much while he's in water, and not just think that he's wet from being in the water. He's hot sweaty guy. It's just the funniest.
My favorite description for any of the books he talked about, yeah, I enjoyed this book a lot. It was surprising how much I enjoyed it. It was really fun and one of the best historical fictions I've read in a long time. Next was the X Hex. Here you go.
Do you think I liked the X Hex by Aaron Sterling? This one you chose based on tropes, so you didn't actually know what the books were, but
Gazebo on it.
second chance romance is what this was. That's the trope you picked. You like the gazebo? Do you think I like this book?
Yes, because I think if the lighting on the gazebo has any
Indication?
indication of how the story is thematically and motif-y.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's probably a warm, light-hearted, fun little
Book.
tale of getting back to someone that you love.
I adored this, as you can tell. It's so funny because I actually talked about this book to him, but I talked so much that he probably forgot that I had talked about it. And that is fair. Okay, there you go. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Have a lovely day.
Remember to subscribe and like this video. And even comment.